Your experience of Elden Ring is in many ways your story of reaching and defeating Malenia. This isn't a lore crafting video, this is a retelling of the player experience in which we reconstruct our journeys through the lands between, starting with the trailers.
It happened an age ago.
And going through Malenia's big moments in order. Joining us on our travels, and I'm pretty sure this makes this video fairly unique in terms of Elden Ring YouTube, are my relaxing yet somewhat mad chinchillas. The dark one is Tanto. She loves Elden Ring. Puff is in the corner. Dark Souls 2 is her favourite, so feel free to ignore Puff. To begin reliving our story to Malenia then, let's go back to before we ever fought her, before even our first steps into Limgrave. Malenia was central to Elden Ring's marketing, including the limited editions. But the first time many of us saw her was this moment from the reveal trailer in 2019.
The Elden Ring. Oh, Elden Ring.
The music, the voiceover, the heaviness of Malenia's motions, something that is so typical of From Software. It was an unforgettable moment. And can you believe it was 5 years ago? Crucially though, this was the very first time most of us officially heard the term Elden Ring out loud, and when we did, we were staring at Malenia. Malenia then was important. Fast forward to the story trailer, which left most of us in no doubt at all that Malenia was going to be an opponent in the game.
And the blade of Miquella and Malenia the Seventh. These two were the mightiest to remain.
And finally, the gameplay trailer, when we got proof positive that Malenia was going to hurt us. Because how else is a champion, or a lord, to be born? I was a late adopter of Soulsborne. My first was Bloodborne in 2018 when it was free on PlayStation Network. And like so many others, for me, these games completely changed not just gaming, but also what movies and shows and books I prefer. But when it came to books, I quickly burned through those that felt like Bloodborne or Dark Souls or Elden Ring, and this led me down a winding route to taking creative writing courses and authoring my own From Software-inspired novel. The first Scars follows the Branded, who, like the Tarnished and Chosen Undead and Hunters, resurrect after death. Don't worry though, the first Scars is not a rip-off, it has its own original characters, setting, plot and magic systems. Readers have even called it dark but fun, which I thought was perfect given the novel's inspirations. So if you love From Software games and or fantasy fiction, the first Scars is out now, links in the description. But back to Malenia. When we finally began our journeys in the lands between, we didn't have far to go to hear tell of Malenia. In fact, the sword monument that mentions her is a whisper away from the very first map, and from where most players get torrent, all in sight of the gatehouse to Stormhill itself. The sword monument reads, Godric the Golden, humiliated, having tasted defeat by the blade of Miquella, now on his knees, begging for mercy. Thus, Malenia was framed at the start of the game as not only able to defeat Godric, who is arguably our most pressing obstacle at this point, but able to humble him. From Software wanted us to fear their super boss, make no mistake. They planted the seed of anticipation in the trailers, and From Software's fragmented storytelling was the perfect method to nurture that seed. The sword monument is just the first crumb on that rotten, beautiful trail. I, like many others, long before venturing into Godric's Stormvale Castle, left Limgrave altogether and went to kill it, completely by choice, of course. There we found a scourged scape of unprecedented threat over which both Radahn and Malenia loomed. In the depths of the nightmare, not far from where the transporter trap spat us out, we undertook a quest for Gowry that led to us receiving the prosthesis wearer's heirloom from Millicent. Coupled with what we knew of Caelid from the trailer and Gowry's ramblings, this heirloom became the very first item I remember that made me think of Malenia. A talisman engraved with a scene from a heroic tale. Though born into the accursed rot, when the young girl encountered her mentor and his flowing blade, she gained wings of unparalleled strength. Caleb then poses many questions to us about the nature of the rot and Malenia's relationship to it, and what the flip is going on, and why is that T-Rex so hairy. But the principal question posed by Caleb might be, if Radahn couldn't beat Malenia, and at the cost of their stalemate was the dissolution of an entire region, how the heck am I supposed to beat her? Later, when Tanto and I fought the launch version of Radahn, that question took on a crushing weight. The next item I picked up that I personally understood as explicitly concerned with Malenia was much later, after defeating Godric and Renala and traversing North 3 Liurnia to reach the Altus Plateau using the Grand Lift. There, we eventually found Poisonous Swamp 3B, also known as the Shaded Castle. The fortress oozes menace, damage over time from the poison, paintings of Malenia, the prosthesis item, which uses the term Valkyrie and suggests Malenia was subject to worship, as with the Anspur rapier. From this point on, Malenia's breadcrumbs appear to lie thicker on the ground. We penetrated deeper into Altus Plateau and the royal capital, eventually defeating Morgoth at the Erdtree. After this, if we talk to Gideon, we can hear another moniker for Malenia, the undefeated swordsman. It was around this time you might have reached the later stages of Ranni's quest, and she informed us that not only is Malenia a demigod, she's one of only 3 Empyreans. There's also updated dialogue from Gary that corroborates Ranni's words about them. I missed this my first playthrough. I think I basically avoided Caelid after the pounding that pre-patch Radahn put me through. So, after the Erdtree appeared to reject us, we passed from Lanedale into the mountains, and then backtracked to the consecrated snowfield. This is when many of us found our way into Mogwin's palace, and eventually met this charming person who has in his possession Miquella, or Miquella's corpse. We took these swirling implications back with us to the consecrated snowfield, and headed north once more, until we finally reached the Haligtree. Malenia's shadow had by this stage long occupied the crevices of our minds, the Empyrean, the undefeated swordsman, victorious in Limgrave, who disfigured Caelid and fought Radahn to a standstill, who is worshipped in Altus Plateau. The fight promised since the original reveal trailer is almost upon us, and we are ready. But that's when From Software doubles down on Malenia's humanity, her relatability. We encounter statues of Malenia in the Haligtree. You might have recognised the one on Altus Plateau. These statues depict Malenia embracing a child, usually assumed to be Miquella, but the embrace is more than just tender. There is a mutuality to it. She needs him, maybe even more than he needs her. Does she know where her brother is? And then, as we enter the Brace of Elfale, not only does Millicent, one of the most likeable NPCs, confirm that she knows she is somehow of Malenia's get, but in the same room we find evidence that Malenia's subordinates may have greatly respected or even adored her. Finley's spirit ashes read, Finley was one of the few survivors of the Battle of Ionia, who in an unimaginable act of heroism carried the slumbering demigod Malenia all the way back to the Haligtree. She managed the feat alone, fending off all manner of foes along the way. So, we battle through the Brace, past rot-enamored aberrations, and descend to the roots of the Haligtree. We find a bloom of rot, and beyond, Malenia. We might be forgiven for feeling conflicted when we win. Will the Haligtree, this refuge for the downtrodden, become a second Caelid? Are we to kill someone who is revered by her subjects, who is loyal to family, who has the strength to carry on under so heinous an affliction as the rot? In short, are we to kill an admirable person?
Heed my words. I am Malenia, Blade of Miquella. And I have never known defeat.
Malenia is the single boss in all of gaming I have the most trouble with, and I'm not alone. She made me regret my limited edition statue, staring at me from beside my TV through each load screen, At least the run back is short. I had to respec from the strength build that had gotten me through literally the rest of the game into a dex build using the Nagakiba and Uchigatana with bleed and frost to try and burst through Malenia's recovery mechanic. I also had pre-nerf Bloodhound Step for Waterfall Dance. However you did it, when you finally won, several items became available. Malenia's Great Rune, Sword, Armor, and the Scarlet Aeonia spell. And they each reinforce your impression of Malenia as the stoic victim, the loving sister, the brave warrior. In many ways, the journey to Malenia is Elden Ring, the greatest challenge the Shadow cast over so much of the experience. Arguably, you even retrace hers and Finley's steps from Caelid to the Haligtree. It is fitting and worrying then that the terminus of Malenia's story, found in the item description of her armor, warns that her brother, Miquella, may be an even greater threat. My brother will keep his promise. He possesses the wisdom, the allure of a god. He is the most fearsome Empyrean of all.
Pure and radiant, he wields love to shrive clean the hearts of men. There is nothing more terrifying